Okay, in this step, what I do, I'm working on the carving the cheeks down to the line that I had on the neck shaft. I use these angle blocks clamped down as a guide, and I use this, I think it's a pattern maker's chisel. I don't know, I bought this like 35 years ago. My favorite chisel. It's a 1-inch chisel. I think it's Sorby makes it. So what I do is I get about a 32nd of an inch showing, and depending on how far you've cut this, it might take several attempts to get it. But what I do is I use this as a guide, and I start, hopefully my hand's not in the way, I use this as a guide to pare this down. And it works best if you a freshly sharpened chisel. So I just sharpened this, and you can see how it's starting to come off here. So I'm going to go down to about where this V is, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the V part of it, and you'll see that in another segment of this episode, how I do that. And then I just gradually work closer to this corner. You got to be really careful with the corner because it's easy to overdo it and not have a crisp corner, but we'll get into that. So this ledge, I'm going to keep working this. Yeah, you can scrape some of that off. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll even spray it with some water. Don't worry about, oh, it's going to expand the wood. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. This actually makes it carve a little bit smoother. So I'm at, and oh, by the way, I'm doing 2 necks at once here. Gives more stability for the angle block here. Somebody knows what these are called? I can't remember. Again, I bought this angle block about 30 years ago. So I'm just kind of like working my chisel, using my thumb to push it against this. See how it starts? See how smooth that is? It's awesome. Now, I came up with this method probably around early 2000s. I don't know how I came up with it. It just kind of like, I had the angle block laying around. I thought, hey, this would be a good idea to get this nice and accurate cut here. So this method, I've been making my V joints. See, we're almost there. So I do different types of V joints. This is the one I use on my Hauser style guitars because that's what Hermann had told me. They use a Fussen or Fussen, however you say that. I do not know. Yes, I'm German, but I'm not from Germany. My grandfather was. Came over here in the late 1800s, early 1900s. My grandfather was actually born in 1870. Can you believe that? My grandpa, 1870. Still blows me away. And my grandpa was 57 when my dad was born. All right, so just got to, just about there. Good. Now I have plenty of, I still have like maybe about a 1/16 of an inch in this corner to work the V part and this cheek. So that'll be fine-tuned a little bit later. We're just kind of getting it real close here. Okay. There we go. Now I still have about another 32nd of an inch to go to move this back towards my line on my neck shaft. So I'm going to do that now. You don't have to see that because you've seen how I pare this away. But that's the whole process for creating all of the surfaces on this joint, and it works really nice. Here is a close-up of that surface. Here's the angle block that the chisel rides up against, and there is the surface. Don't worry about this discoloration. That happens from the water and the metal. That's not going to affect anything, and you won't see it when the neck shaft is all done. All right, there we go. All right, so I've narrowed everything down to the cheeks of my blanks here. You can see that smooth wall there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing with my angle block. I'm going to clamp it on here, and I'm going to pare down to these lines on each one of these blanks. So you'll see that in the next segment. Here is my setup for doing the V. Excuse me. I've already done some of it already. You can see how smooth that is. This part will get cleaned up a little bit later. But again, it's the same idea where I use my paring chisel, whoops, and I use it as a guide to pare away about a 32nd of an inch slice off of this part right here. And that gives me a real nice crisp joint. So I'm going to continue to work on these, and you're going to see the finished result in just a minute. So here's my setup. I'm going to pare away this part. Now I use these cutoffs that were, let's see, right here. And it's one of these is on the other side here, underneath this part here. So here's how I cut it away. I go on this block right here and start paring that away like that. Hi. So this way is a lot easier than going across the grain that we were doing on the cheeks of the V joint. So this was actually a pretty thick cut, maybe a little bit too aggressive. I should have done a little bit less. It would have shaved off a little bit easier here. There you go. You start to see it here. Almost done. great using this guide. Really helps get a nice accurate cut. So anyway, it's almost there. You don't need to watch the rest of this. Probably boring watching me cut all that. You get the idea. So next video or next part of this, you'll see this all cleaned up. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm cleaning up this corner part here. Let me show you. Here's one that hasn't been cleaned up yet. So I'm using the wall. This is my guide for my chisel here to get right into that corner. So I'll go this way, and I'll use it this way to get right up to that corner. Make a crisp cut there, and then you can kind of use this corner edge of your chisel, kind of scrape it a little bit. Now we're going to continue to do more refining of this, but this is pretty good right now. So now I'm going to do this other one here, which you can see still needs to be cleaned up, and then we'll do the next step there. All right, there you go. Okay, now that we've pared this down in the corners there, I take this little sanding block. It's got 80 grit on it, and I just go in and just fine tune everything on these edges. And I'm going to be using this some more as we fit the joint. So now our next step is, here is the head, and what I've done is I've clamped it onto the male end of the V joint, and we are not going to cut the V all the way through, and you're going to see how I do that. So what I've done is I've marked it. I'm using this head that goes with this blank. I'm using this as a template. So what I've done is I've drawn a line here on each side, and then I'm going to cut this part out, which you're going to see in the next part. So now I've got the V template cut or drawn on there. Take my block here. I'm going to clamp that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my paring chisel here. I'm really just marking out a line here. This will get refined throughout the process. So there's that part. Now I'm going to mark the other one. So it's actually a little bit on the inside of the line, which is good. It's actually what we want. Better having it too small than too big. Again, we're not going for the final cut here. We're going to work up to it. So I work from the tip and slide back here. Again, I'm just doing this to mark out where I want the female part of this V joint. Remember, we're not going to be cutting all the way through this head because it's a covered V, not a through V. Through V means the V goes all the way through the head. We're going to leave a few millimeters. There we go. Got this one marked. And next step, I'm actually going to use a saw and cut close to this line and chisel some of that out. All right, so I've gone ahead a little bit here, and what I did is I cut using this, I don't know what you call this, a flush trim saw. I cut the line to the line, actually just short of the line, on each side here. And now what I'm doing is I'm just taking a chisel, I'm chiseling out some of this. Now, what you're going to see in the upcoming segment of this video is once I've got a good wall here and it's real close to my line, I'm going to use this wall as a flush trim cut with my router bit. So the bearing will run on this, and I'll get the floor of the covered V will be perfect. So right now, I'm just kind of like working on this wall, get it nice and vertical here so it can be a bearing surface for the flush trim bit that I'm going to use on my router table. All right, so that's the next step. I want to save at least about 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of this, so this is going to get cut pretty deep. Now, the thickness of the head, this is going to be about 19 millimeters thick, because I'm going to, remember, we're going to be gluing the head plate onto this, and it's going to be a total of 20 millimeters. Okay, so a lot of this will get thicknessed away from here, but we want at least 2 millimeters from the end here, so we have the covered V. Here's a close-up of what I've got so far. So I'm working on this side right here, getting that flush trimmed. Then I'll work on this side here. Then we'll clean it up with the router bit. Okay, now that we have the female end kind of roughed out here, I'm now going to take this pattern routing bit. I think it might be about 1/2 inch deep and 1/2 inch diameter. And the bearing is going to rub against this top edge. So I don't have it set for the complete depth, just enough to clean up this wall. And then I'm gonna, once that's done, I'm gonna get this down, maybe remove about another 1/8 of an inch here in the depth. So that's my next step on the head here. All right, so everything is now cut down to depth. Now this part in here that you can see in the back, let's see, right here, that we're gonna use some chisels and level that out. And you'll see I got about 1/8 of an inch gap right there. So now I'm going to be chiseling this part out. You can see the radius there from the router bit. So I'm going to be using a special tool. This is I think they call this a fishtail chisel. I think I got this from Lee Nelson. Yeah, sure enough. So I have a couple of these. I bought them about probably 20 years ago. I hope they still make them. So this allows me to get back in there and get a nice crisp tip in the joint there. All right, so that's my next step. All right, we have our neck blanks all roughed out, and now we're ready for the fitting. You thought that was the hard part. That was the easy part. Next part is fitting this joint and gluing it up. It'll be the last part in our series on building this Covered Vee Fussen joint. All right, thanks for watching this part 2 in this series, and I'm looking forward to part 3 and sharing that with you. Now, if you like what you're seeing, excuse me, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Or if you want to contribute to this channel, there is a tip jar down below. You can access that if you feel like leaving a tip. That helps me to create this content and invest in this channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and have fun building them guitars. See you next time. Bye-bye.